I remember sitting in that cramped examination room, my wife's hand perched lightly on my shoulder, as if it were the only bridge tethering me to this moment. I can still feel the fluorescent hum, like a subtle pressure against my skull, and the soft clink of the doctor's bracelets whenever she gestured. I had always found certain sounds oddly amplified, certain textures strangely intense. Her voice was calm, measured. I could see every vowel forming on her lips as she said those words. "It's very likely that you are on the autism spectrum." I tried to smile, to respond, to show I understood, but it was like my entire language system had locked up. My gaze fell to the floor, tracing the grout lines between tiles, thinking how they seemed too straight, too perfect, how I never before noticed their tiny imperfections. My wife's hand tightened just slightly. She must have felt my pulse rising through my shoulders' tense muscles. In that moment, I felt raw, exposed. The doctor's office, with its posters of body systems and brochures about coping strategies, suddenly felt too bright, too honest. A piece of me wanted to run out, to vanish into the familiar routines where I could just be without explanation. But I stayed. I stayed because my wife was there, and because this doctor, kind but unflinching, was handing me an answer I never knew I needed. The shame came unexpectedly, a hot wave in my chest. Why shame? Why not relief? I suppose it was because I had spent my life doubting myself, assuming I was just too rigid, too locked inside my own head. There had been countless moments. My wife would say she needed comfort, and I'd try to solve her problems analytically, offering solutions rather than the hug she'd craved. And all of a sudden, I'd notice how people's eyes drifted from mine at parties, how I struggled to read laughter unless it was so loud I could hear it echo. I'd try to show love through precise acts of service, alphabetizing spice racks, fixing that squeaky hinge, arranging our house meticulously, while she perhaps wondered why I didn't just say, "I love you," in simple, straightforward words. Our misunderstandings had seemed random, like sandpaper against my good intentions. And now this new word, this new lens was placed in my hand: autism. I know it's just a diagnostic category, a guidepost, rather than a prison cell. Yet it explains so much. Why I felt so alien at family gatherings, why the hum of the refrigerator at night felt as loud as a distant train, why my romantic gestures were more likely to be spreadsheets of details than spontaneous poetry. I am not broken, just different. My brain hums at a different frequency. It weaves connections others might miss, but struggles with the subtleties most people take for granted. The memory of my wedding day surfaces now. I recall my bride's face, glowing with quiet joy. At the time, I was overwhelmed by the exactness of the moment, her dress's white fabric reflecting the late afternoon sun, the way the officiant's shoes squeaked against the wooden floor, the spacing of the guests' chairs. I loved her so deeply, but I'm not sure if I ever told her in a way that struck the chord she needed. I see now that while I was busy counting steps to ensure a perfect entry, she was scanning my eyes for an unspoken tenderness I failed to show. But here I am, at the crossroads of understanding and self-acceptance, and I feel a deep stirring within. I don't have to explain all my past choices away as failures. I can reinterpret them now. Those nights I sat quietly, fiddling with my hands, seemingly distant. Maybe I was loving her fiercely in a silent language only I could hear. In later years, I tried to explain why that night in my room. Perhaps looking back, she'll recognize the devotion threaded through my acts of careful attention, the way I learned to brew her favorite tea exactly at her preferred temperature, or how I memorized the patterns of her moods so I could anticipate what small comforts might bring her solace, even if I never knew how to label them as love. Glance at my wife now, her eyes shining with something new. Maybe it's relief, finally understanding why I function the way I do. Maybe it's compassion, an awakened empathy that runs in parallel to my own realization. In that brief exchange, I sense a gentle loosening inside me, a knot untangling. She squeezes my shoulder again, and I almost feel words passing silently between us. No blame, no pity, just understanding. I look back at the doctor, who is explaining resources, support networks, therapies if I want them. Her voice is steady. I sense that I'm not alone, that many adults discover this about themselves later in life, and that it's not a tragedy, but a revelation. She's given me a compass, and for the first time, I trust this compass. It's pointing me toward a landscape of self-compassion, toward recognizing that I'm allowed to be who I am with all my intensities and peculiarities. I close my eyes and feel a warm tear slip down my cheek. This isn't sadness, it's a release. I feel my heart lift, lighter, as if understanding my difference sets me free from the relentless need to be normal. In this spacious clarity, I sense everyone in the world, unique constellations of perceptions, each hidden world waiting for understanding. We're all speaking in different tongues of love, trying to translate ourselves into each other's hearts. Now, finally, I have a dictionary of my own patterns. I can learn to translate better, show my care with both actions and words, tune my empathy so it resonates outward. For the first time, I feel a quiet, radiant kinship with humanity's grand chorus. My differences are not barriers, they're keys, unlocking deeper forms of compassion. In the hush of that small examination room, I understand. We are all sharing an unspoken language beneath our many misunderstandings. We just need to learn how to listen, how to let compassion guide us through unknown territories. And as I open my eyes, I see my wife meeting me halfway across that silent bridge, her gaze steady and welcoming, both of us breathing in the gentle truth that we have never truly been alone.